Welcome to a new episode of my home automation, OpenHab and Node-RED playlist. Since I will be playing around with the Sonoff Wi-Fi switches quite a lot, I thought I'd just create a separate video on how to flash it and flash it with ESP easy, because that's what I'm going to be using. So I can just reference this video from all the other videos I will be doing in the future. And I've done something like this in the past, but I only had one device and I haven't actually recorded the process from the beginning to an end, so I could not create a video on some of the steps. So I'm just planning to correct that in this video. So this is a new Sonoff. I haven't modified any of the software on it, so I will be recording everything as I do sort of live, so you should be able to see all the steps that I'm doing in order to get the new firmware on. For this activity you would obviously need a Sonoff. You need the usual, soldering iron tools, and you also need this pin header. And if you're not familiar with this, it's called the 0.1 inch straight male pin header. So if you Google that on eBay or any of the usual sites, you should be able to find that. And it usually comes in long strips, and then you can just break off any number of pins that you need. And I'm using the one which has like a square pins, because there are versions with a round pin as well. Besides that, you need an FTDI, USB to TTL converter, and what is most important is you need one which has a 3.3 pin, because the ESP works on 3.3. Again, I got this on eBay from a seller which is called Chips Fans, and but again, just go on eBay, search for USB to TTL, and just go through the listing, look at the pictures, make sure that it has the 3.3 pin. Usually, it has 5 volt and 3.3 volts as well. Some other models would have a dip switch, like a switch or a pin where you can select whether the output is 5 volt or 3.3 volts. And there are different varieties. So some would have a USB plug, so you need to use a lead. I just wanted to keep it simple, so this plugs straight into my USB on my laptop. Again, having different pins for 5 and 3.3 volts just makes it easy, so I don't, mess it up accidentally by, not having the jumper in the correct position. And you also need a couple of these leads. It just makes life easy because they plug into these pin headers quite easily. And of course you need, the usual soldering irons and solder and flux and the other bits and pieces. So let me go ahead and take this apart. You have to break this seal, and then it pops off. Yeah, and that's how the inner looks like. I'm not going to go into the details, but yeah, that's the ESP, and we are interested in about those headers that are right there. You can see 5 of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pin header and I'm going to break off 5 pins. That's it. And it's going to go in like this. So it should sit like this. And yeah. And now what we need to do is we need to solder these pins on the other side. And in order to do that, I usually have a piece of blue tack just to hold this pin in place, the pin header in place, because if you flip the board around, obviously it's going to fall out. So whilst the soldering iron heats up, I'm using this gas soldering iron. I just want to say the reason I'm using ESP, so there are many different firmwares available to do various stuff, and ESP Easy was it's more like a generic stuff which can do a lot of things. It has some nice functions, but what I like about most is you download the flash and it comes with an executable, and you just run that in Windows and then flash it in well, the other firmwares I have seen, usually you have to download the Arduino IDE, which is like a development environment. You load the code, you have to make some changes and set up, and also need to modify the code in order to supply your Wi-Fi credentials and then upload that. And I just try to keep it simple for, let's say, the average user who's probably I mean, if you are familiar with or you are comfortable using a soldering iron and you have some basic computer skills, you should be able to do this. And if you need something else, probably you have to be a little bit more advanced user. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit complicated because my soldering iron tip is not really like a fine tip. So I just have to be careful not to breach any connections other than the pads that I need to solder. Okay. I also use some flux just to make sure that the solder flows easily. Okay, and the last one. Okay. And yeah, I should also use a fume extractor. Okay, that should be it. So this is how it looks up close. And now I can remove the blue tack, and yeah, we have the connections right there. I've created this Sonoff cheat sheet document to remember the pinout on this pin header. So just going to the video description, you will find a link to that. But basically, if you hold the ESP like this, the topmost pin is 3.3 volts, and the next one is RX, and the other one is TX, and the next one is ground. So I have it like this. So I'm using red for 3.3 volts, black for ground, and I'm using the other two for the data lines. And on the FTDI chip, obviously red goes to 3.3 volts, black goes to ground, and the other two goes to the RX and the TX. And if you swap the RX and the TX around, then the firmware is not the PC will not be able to flash your ESP, but other than that, it's not going to have any ramifications. So I just plug it in. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, I just swap these two, the green and the brown around, and try again. Now we are ready to connect the programmer to the laptop. And important thing is that you do this without the ESP being connected to the mains, so that's really important. And the other one is to put the ESP into programming mode. You have to you have to bring the pin 0 to ground, and conveniently enough, this push button on the ESP is on pin 0. So push that and plug it into the USB. Jesus, complicated. Okay, and you can let the button go, and I can see that the laptop has recognized the new device, this programmer, which is sitting on COM2. So now I can go ahead and download the firmware. So I just type ESP easy, and it gives me this letscontrol.com. You scroll down to ESP easy, you click on wiki, you click on ESP easy, you click on download firmware, and at the moment there are the stable firmware is release 120, but there is also release candidate. But for the Sonoff, I'm just going to use the stable firmware, so 120. So just click here, it downloads, and you unzip it. And I've already done that. And you extract the zip, and you will have a few files. The only thing you need to remember is what you have to know is this flash .cmd. So you double click to execute, and you get this window where the first question is, what is your COM port? So my COM port is COM2. So again, that's from the, you can see from the device manager. So just put 2. Next, the flash size. So the flash size on this one is 1024. So it's 1 megabyte or bit of flash. So anyway, so type 1024. And the build is 120. And just enter. And now you wait. And if you get this, this means that you got the data lines swapped around. You have the data lines in the wrong order, so the blue and the brown ones. So yeah, it failed. So I'm just going to swap them around like this. Okay. So the chip is still in programming mode. And I start a program again, and the procedure is same. And release 120. And if you wait just a little bit, now it is working, and you can see that it's flashing. The LED on the FTDI chip is flashing, or the USB board, and it should take a few seconds to complete, but that should be all. Okay, wonderful, that's it. Press any key to continue, and the flash has finished. So what we need to do now is restart the ESP, which you do by unplugging the FTDI and then plugging that again. And now we are not, you know, the firmware is on, so we don't need to press the button again. So now the ESP is running, and at this point I don't really need the laptop anymore. So now I'm going to use my iPad to complete the setup. So I go to settings, because now with the new ESP, what happens is the ESP creates its own wireless network, which is called the ESP0. So you find it on your phone, iPad, whatever, or your laptop, you connect to it. And then, as it happens on iOS, when it connects to a network which doesn't have wireless or internet access, then it always brings up this logon screen. So now you can see that, oh yeah, welcome to the new ESP device, and it's called new device, and now you have to pick your own wireless network you want the ESP to connect to. So you pick, not this one, you want to pick that one, and then you type the password. So I clicked on connect, and now the ESP is going to, I think, probably reboot and connect to my wireless network, and then it should only take a couple of seconds. Unfortunately, the only thing we don't see here is what the new address of the ESP is. But to find that out, I'm using another program which I usually run on my phone, and this program is called Fing, or F-I-N-G. And what it does is basically scans your network, and it just finds all the devices that you have. And I've already have loads, and it's usually easy for me to tell when a new device connects to my network. And in this case, I know that all the ESP ones all the ESP chips have this express if wireless chipset. So that comes up as the chipset on the, well, yeah, on this program. So I know that this you know, this generic device on 192.168.1.128 is my new Sonoff. And if I scan my services, I can see that it has the HTTP, which is the only service it does. So this is where it serves the configuration screen. So I would just probably do the rest of the setup from the laptop, because it's easier that way. So I'm back at the laptop. I've opened a new Chrome, a new browser, but you can use any browser. I just happen to have Chrome, and you just type the address. So http:// and the address that I got from the mobile app, and you will see that, oh yeah, this is the new device, and yeah, these are the basic settings. So the first thing is you go to config, and I'm going to rename this device. So I'm going to rename it to Sonoff 2. The reason I'm using 2 because I already have a Sonoff. things to remember here: if you want this admin page to have a password, you can put the password here. What I'm also going to be doing is I'm going to be connecting to an MQTT server. So I'm going to set up my MQTT credentials. So it's the IP of the MQTT server. So it wouldn't be required for some of the exercises. Important to remember again, if now the Sonoff is getting an IP address from your local router, so it gets assigned automatically. But if you want to use like a fixed IP, then you will need to set them here. So IP, gateway, subnet mask, and a DNS. Going on to hardware, I want, again, it is coming from the cheat sheet, but the status LED is GPIO 13. So I want the status LED to GPIO 13. So the ESP, so the firmware is going to flash it when there is network traffic, and I want to leave everything as it is. So I'm going to submit, and for the devices, I'm going to configure two things. Again, this would be required if you're using MQTT. But I like to receive some updates from my Sonoff from time to time. So, so the first here is the uptime. So I'm just setting the system info name uptime. You need this variable, and then the indicator is you can have this for system info, system statistics. So first is the uptime. I'm just removing the decimals. I don't need that. So it's just giving me minutes. So I submit and close. And for the second one, I'm also using system info, and I'm just putting Wi-Fi. So it's going to be ID2 Wi-Fi. Again, I don't need the decimals, and submit. So basically what it's going to do is on MQTT, it's going to send me the uptime and the Wi-Fi strength and I do that here, and I change this one to 5, which is a sensor delay. So it's going to do it at every 5 seconds. And yeah, and that should be the basic configuration of the ESP. And if there is anything extra, I'm going to talk about them in the individual videos. But I hope you can follow this process and get your own ESP working. But that should be all for now. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.